All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, for those of you who will be watching after the fact, hopefully this is a great live for you. But for those of you who are here with us, welcome to Mastering the MarTech Stack Integration and Troubleshooting for Managers. We're joined today by two gracious hosts. We're waiting for Ed, but the mission of AMA. So, I don't know if any of you are members, but for those of you who know nothing about us, the African American Marketing Association is a 501(c)(3). This organization was formed in 2019 to educate, empower, and elevate Black marketers, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We accomplish this through programming such as this, and also community building and access to opportunities across the marketing and creative industries. Today's program is focused on the MarTech stack from a manager's perspective. So we want to help you integrate new system and troubleshoot existing ones. All right, getting into our first speaker. So Leticia Johnson, I met her in Atlanta last year and she is great. So Leticia Johnson is a cultural strategist, brand architect, and entrepreneur shaping the future of creator-led marketing. She is the founder and CEO of Ingenious Brands, a cultural intelligence platform and agency powering campaigns across media, sports, and entertainment. Her career spans strategy roles at Fortune 500 companies and leadership across startups and studios, delivering iconic campaigns and scaling ecosystem through programs that drive measurable growth. And she blends creative instinct with commercial impact, building companies and partnerships that sit at the intersection of culture, commerce, and community. At the core of Ingenious Brands is the Cultural Intelligence Engine, a proprietary technology that decodes cultural signals at scale and transforms influence into measurable return on investment. This innovative powers smarter decision, uh, helping brands identify who to invest in, when to engage, and how to activate. Leticia builds for a new era. When campaigns are conversation, cultural relevance is the competitive edge, and cultural impact is the ultimate return on investment. When influence shifts to impact, the industry changes. One of our next speakers who are waiting is Ed Ferguson. So, Ed Ferguson is a connector at heart. He is also the founder of H Town Handshakes, which is a Houston based community. So he has decades of experience in IT, digital marketing, and system strategy. Edward is known for simplifying complex ideas and helping people build relationships that actually drive revenue. His focus is simple: bring the right people into the room and make connections easy and help businesses grow faster together. All right, so we want to welcome these two speakers to the stage. We're still waiting for Ed to join us, but we'll get started. Leticia, how are you? You got to unmute for us.
I'm doing well.
Yes, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It may just be us today. I'm waiting for Edward to join, but I don't want to waste any time. You're a very busy individual, so thank you for being here. First, let's open up and just talk a little bit about Ingenious. Can you kind of tell the people about the company and your impact? You got to unmute yourself. Good. All right. Give us a little word to mute you again. Okay, try to give us some audio now. No. Oh, there you go. I can hear you now. Oh, did you take your earphones out from the first time? Okay, plug them back in, or unplug them, plug them in. 'Cause I heard you for a second, then I didn't hear you. And excuse the technical difficulties, people. This happens. This happens. Let's see. Uh-uh. It was like for a second I heard something right then. Did you like hit a button in that second? Oh wow. I don't know. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Technology. That's why we here, y'all. The MarTech stack. We gotta figure this out. Um, let's see. Let's see. Because it's not muted in the system. Let's see. Can you try it with it? Okay, she's redoing it. All right, y'all. Excuse our technical difficulties. This is happening live in action. But we're still excited to tell you all about the MarTech stack. We have four impactful questions that'll help you kind of go through your data privacy. It'll help you with that integration piece, help you sunset some tools that you have. Let me add the t-shirts.
All
All
right,
right, give us a
awesome.
word. All right,
Word.
perfect, perfect, perfect.
Okay. All
Okay,
right,
we had a
awesome.
little, technical difficulty. So again, tell us about the brand, and then we'll hop into these questions.
For sure. So, Ingenious is exactly what you said. We really focus on helping brands, enterprise brands primarily, identify who the best partners are to work with across creator marketing as well as influencer. We started with influencer marketing because it was the most fragmented piece of the marketing tech stack. And over time, just realized that the issue that we were solving was really across the entire marketing ecosystem. And so we've been consistently helping brands to become the system of record for their organization through our technology as well as our enablement services.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And even in that, starting a tool, right? So our first question of the day is about tech bloat and auditing, right? And I would assume a lot of your clients, well, you have a great team, so y'all know a little bit about her team, PSA. So I'm pretty sure like the onboarding for your clients is super streamlined. But for a lot of clients, right, when they're onboarding to new tools, it's hard, right? They don't
Mhm.
understand where there's overlap. They don't understand where they basically have tech bloat, right? So when performing a stack audit, what are the specific red flags that you would look for? Would say like maybe this tech is no longer an asset for us. What are you kind of looking for?
I think honestly, what I always kind of start with not just our customers, but also internally with our team, is really looking through the reason and the productivity, right? And so really understanding the ways in which your team works, understanding the ways in which the organization is supposed to function, and then working backwards from there. One of the things that I kind of identified and why we started building Ingenious is because I spent many years inside of enterprise companies. And most of these companies were kind of spread across different types of platforms and then always defaulting to a spreadsheet or a database or a Notion dashboard in order to run campaigns. And so to me, anytime that your team is working outside of a system or having to start to build tools around that system, it typically is a red flag that that system is not working to solve the problem as intended. And what ends up happening is that instead of solving the problem, the root cause is when you have budget, you just go and buy the next thing.
Mhm,
So this
mhm.
one thing didn't solve it, or it has five things of the seven things I need to solve. So I go and buy another tool that solves one of the seven things that I need to solve. And now together, maybe I'm three steps of the way there, but there are seven things and seven steps in my workflow that should be functioning together and working effectively. And so I kind of always really start with the people in the
Mhm.
process. How are they working? Where is the system falling down and where is it breaking at? And then how can we enable tools or augment the workflow in order to enable it the way that it should function?
I love that. I love that a lot. And it kind of takes us into the sunsetting too, right? So back to my corporate experience, we had end up going through a tool migration. And so this tool, it was an ad tech tool, but it was basically helping us launch the campaigns. And so to the point you made, right, we had to create workflows to support the tool, right? And so a lot of tech bloat for companies is exactly that, right? So and especially with the age of AI. Oh yeah, we have Edward here. And with the age of AI, um, a lot of people are now creating smaller tools, right? Even to beat the cost, right? It's like, oh, for me, I use NAN in the agency. For people out there who don't like NAN or have better tools, let me know. But I use that for like a lot of automation workflows, specifically for like some more autonomous work. And that has been a thing for me, right? But when I was in corporate and they were sunsetting the tool, we had to go through trainings with the demo reps and everything. And it literally took them like 6 months to make that decision. So to your point, it's better to find out where that fallout is and kind of fix the issue early on. Edward, thank you for joining us. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I am great. I'm super excited to be here with you guys.
Good deal, good deal. Well, look, we were going through the first question, and that is about auditing the tech stack for tech bloat. So, what are some red flags that you would look for when performing that audit? So that would say this tool is no longer an asset for us. What are we looking for?
So, in terms of that, we have to really look at the bottom line. Is it serving the purpose? A lot of times we review the applications, and on paper, it looks like it's causing bloat, it looks like it's expensive. But the reality is, the first question that we have to ask is it serving its purpose? Now, if it's not serving the purpose, then we need to go back and analyze what is going to serve the purpose in terms of the ultimate need. And every business, I'm going to have to add, is a little bit different in terms of that aspect. So the results could be volume based, it can be action based, it can be communication based. So we really have to understand what the bottom line is for those particular businesses. And once we understand that, then we can go into looking at the tech bloat. In terms
Mhm.
of the tech bloat in general, there's a couple of things that we're looking at for that. So one is redundancy in function. A lot of times, what we'll see is in terms of the environments, different groups are using similar apps or different apps for similar functions. And so, for instance, we can be leveraging, and now I'm dating myself, but I remember back in the day we
That's
had
fine.
WebEx, and, but some teams would be leveraging WebEx, or some teams would be leveraging Communicator, and really depending on the task, a lot of the times we can consolidate that into one app.
Mm, mhm, mhm, mhm. I love that. I love that a lot. And the point I was making was about AI now, right? So a lot of companies are trying to create tools to meet that gap, right? And just to stand in there. And so, what's your perspective on that? For like, because to Letitia's point, she was saying when you kind of see that gap, make sure you migrate then. So when are you all migrating and sunsetting?
So, go ahead, Letitia.
Well, I think for me, like AI is so amazing, and I've worked in technology for 20 years now, and this is the fastest iteration and adoption cycle that I've seen of a technology where, you have things that are changing in real time, and you have organizations and people within those organizations who are using it in their everyday life, and then they're bringing that into work because they're building out their own personal marketing tech stacks or their own personal AI stacks. And so I think it's really great to enable kind of AI native working environments. But to do that, I think that when you're introducing tools into processes and systems that are already broken, right? If you really think about marketing or organizational infrastructure as a whole, in my prior life before I started in Genius, my role was operational effectiveness, process improvements, really being able to understand the mechanisms of an organization so that it could work at its highest function. And I did that across revenue, and I did that across strategy as well as creative work. And some of the things that were kind of always there is that whenever people would try to introduce a new tool into a system that was already broken, it never worked. Adoption kind of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
altered. And the reason for that is because you had to really truly rethink the way that things operate as a whole. And so I think with AI, it's amazing that it's being integrated. I think that it's kind of transitioned everyone. It's democratized the ability to create now instead of needing to build a new tool and having to go through 6 months of iteration cycles. Someone can say, hey, this will make my job easier and go and prototype that. That is amazing. It should be enabled. But you have to take a step back as an organization and really look at, are our processes serving the intended function? Or have we really started to just pull these fragmented pieces together?
I
And
love
so
that.
when I think about AI, it's really through that lens, which is, can we truly rethink how we're doing work today so that the AI is leading and then it's augmenting the process versus building AI to just repeat the process that's not the most effective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Edward, you had something on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah, the phrase is garbage in, garbage out, right? And so, if the processes are broken, Absolutely, you're not going to solve the process by throwing another tool at it. Um, I think also one of the things that a lot of organization leaders don't realize is that the impact is significantly greater than their unit alone. And so we have to look at big picture. So, for instance, actually, this was just yesterday. I had a client who happened to be working in the medical space, and they were asking about leveraging AI as part of some of their communications on their websites, such that when people are having questions, if they're not available, or even to get faster traction in terms of the patient, if they can implement this tool in that space. And that was on the website as well as on the phone. So we had these call queues, and we call into the queue, schedule an appointment. And you have to look at it from a larger picture. And the bigger picture in this situation would be, okay, so this is a new technology. Um, and not that new technologies don't happen all the time, but it's so new that legislation does not exist. And are you going to be protected if something happens on either way? So it can go either way. And so we're looking at it from perspective of PHI or patient health information. And so when that data gets pulled into a system like an AI system, it's not like a traditional database where you can just pull that data out or just delete a line. It's integrated into that system wholly. And so that data situation turns into, okay, are we going to be able to be in compliance with what other statutes that exist around data protection? Also, in terms of the vendors themselves, we have to look at it from the perspective of what's the vendor doing with this data. And so think about that movie Minority Report back in the day, when you have this character that all of these data points individually don't mean much, but when you put them together, then you start to draw conclusions. And so the individual may or may not want to be a part of that journey. And because legislation isn't in place to accurately protect either the consumer or the business, it could turn into a serious situation. Along those lines, now that we're talking about protection, now we have to go back to our insurance carriers to see, okay, if we implement this AI product in our infrastructure and something happens, even though we checked all of the boxes, are you still going to cover us in the event of a situation? And depending on that situation, it could be a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can be on the hook for if they say no.
You just made a beautiful point. Business insurance. Ha. And
Yes.
I feel like a lot of brands, to the point being made when they're making these tools, aren't even considering the overall organizational impact, right, Edward? And so it's not just now my workflow is streamlined, this team has production decrease time, right? No, now we have to think about our insurance policies, right? Are we even protecting our data, right? Is this company that, well, not the company itself, is this tool we're building scalable, right? Is it, for one, can we actually put that in an environment and then protect it in terms of, like, can our data team go to it? Is it just a proprietary tool for you, right? Did you build it for yourself? Did you build it for the team? So there's so many questions that I have around that. But you led me into the point about data security, right? So how should managers be auditing their stack for, one, security compliance, and then of course data residency, right? So what are your non-negotiables in these tools?
I think for our team, since we're building our own internal tools, we have our own IP, we have our own platform. And so we're always looking at it through that lens of we're processing a lot of data. And to Edward's point, I think that there is a reason that medical, the med tech industry, as well as brand tech, MarTech, have been the kind of last ones to fully adopt these tools. And it is because of that, a lot of the pieces that are already in place because of the consumer protections against the processing of data. And so I think for me, the non-negotiables are, before we integrate any type of model into our own personal workflows or recommend it to our customers in ways that they can integrate, is that not only the base level of protections are in place, but SOC 2, Type 2, ensuring that you have a data processing agreement that's up to date, understanding the transparency of the models that you're using and how it is being used to train the rest of the models. That said, because we do work with a lot of enterprise level brands, they also have their own requirements. And so it's a very intensive process to go through validating the procurement process to get approved for these brands, in the same way that in the medical field, before you can deploy something, it has to be HIPAA compliant. And so even though there aren't a lot of legislations that cover AI, I do see brands but there are laws that address how we should process data. And so where there are moments where there is that gap between what the legislature and what the courts can decide and what's already in place, I think it then comes down to, do you have your encryption where it needs to be? Is the data protected on both ends? And then what is that data processing agreement? And are you updating that every 3 to 6 months? Because the speed in which these models are moving, the speed in which the technology is moving, does require not just a yearly review. I think it requires a monthly review to ensure that you are being ahead and being proactive with how you process data.
I love that. That's a really good point. Especially to the point you made about the ecosystem being updated. That was one for me, and specifically for me, right? So as y'all know, I'm not anything tech related, right? So a lot of this is foreign knowledge. Like when you said SOC 2, I think it was like another term. I was like, oh my God, what is that? But to the point of iteration and updating, that is something that I'm seeing, right? A lot of our software providers are like, hey, we have this new update. Would you like to license it, et cetera? And I'm like, I didn't really think about how I should be licensing your tool. But you make a great point. If I'm building the tool, or if I have a team member building a tool, we need to make sure they're updating it and compliant, right, for our organization and clients. I love that. Edward, what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I agree with everything that both of you guys said. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to look at where the organization exists and what the rules are for the organization, whatever it happens to be, and whether those rules are self imposed, whether those rules are government based or entity based. You have to look at that to see where it is. In terms of the addressing it in the schedule, I think that's a definitely a part that a lot of organizations overlook. And so, like, if your rules are dusty, so to say, and you're not looking at it like every 3 to 6 months, like Letitia mentioned, then that's also a problem. Also, you have to look at who's handling your data. And so, in the past, the major data centers only existed in certain locations. Now those data centers, in terms of distributed computing, they can live all over the world. And depending on the requirements, sometimes it's up to the organization to identify where they want to house their data, like physically, where does the data exist? When we talk about it's in the cloud is, at the end of the day, it's a physical location. It is a data center. And if that is not in compliance with whatever those rules are for your entity or organization, then that needs to be looked at as well to ensure that you are in compliance in protecting that data.
I love that a lot. And yeah, a lot of people don't even consider that this is like a physical location your data will have to be in. And I don't even think, well, I can't say what I think about a lot of businesses. I know for mine, right, we start to use like, we use Google Drive for almost everything, right? But then like Dropbox and other little storage apps, we pay for the little enterprise piece. And that's the point. We have to realize where our client data is. And so that also brings us to this question. A major hurdle in MarTech is data silo, right? So you have data here, data there, but when your lead data is living in a CRM, engagement data is in your email service provider, your conversion data is an analytics tool. As we both know, all of us know, things get really messy, right? So how do you technically ensure that single source of truth, that dashboard is correct? How are you all kind of moving the data around?
Well, first you integrate Ingenious to become the system of record for your marketing organization. But I think prior to that, right, like this was the issue, and this is the reason that kind of the catalyst for me starting Ingenious and starting to build the tools One, because a lot of the marketing tools that are used in everyday tech stack weren't utilized by people who'd actually done the job, been inside creative operations, really understand how to go from, idea to implementation and all of the steps that need to happen in that process. With AI, with the ability to now process reams and reams of data really quickly, it can start to escalate if you have a member on your team who prefers Chat GPT and has integrations with Google Drive, and then you have another who prefers Microsoft products and has an integration with Claude, and it's kind of going down through those processes. And so best practices, I say, is kind of two things. Is one, always have an offline backup source of your data, because cloud fails, things happen, things go offline. We've had outages, multiple outages over the last several months where, AWS was down and half of the internet was down as well. And so I think for smaller businesses, for small to mid-sized businesses, when something happens, when an outage goes out, you always want to be able to access your data or access your customers' data. You always want to have a fail safe. I think the second piece then is, now that we have kind of access to our data and we understand these pieces, who are our chosen providers? And really understanding and asking those questions of your organization and of your providers. We'd love to see your data processing agreement. It's called a DPA. You can request that, have it sent over to you. Highly, highly encourage everyone to be reading these documents and have a very clear understanding of what happens when you upload data into these systems. But you also have the choice to opt out of sharing the data and training the model. And I don't think enough people know that and understand that you can actually say, I don't want you to use my data to train the rest of the model. And so I think it really starts there. It's just that understanding and that knowledge of, these are our providers, this is what is consistent, and really looking at that. Isaiah, if you're using Google Drive, does Google Drive have an offline additional cloud storage that you can provide instead of going outside of that ecosystem? Because now what happens is, you're saving data in Google Drive. You're now saving data in Dropbox. You might have some data over in N8N. What is happening when all of that data needs to communicate? So even though it's making you faster, it's also fragmenting the data and causing more broken moments within the process. And so where we always start is the consolidation. What is the most important things that you need to do with your data? And how do you enrich that data to get the outcome that you need? And so I really always, recommend starting there and then having one trusted system where you are updating that consistently. Your team is updating that consistently, because the systems are only as good as the data inputs to steal Edwards, garbage in, garbage out. Right. And so I think it starts there.
I love that. I love that.
I so yes, I agree with that until you get to a certain point. Now that certain point depends on the size of the organization. I think in terms of getting larger to get smaller. So like let's say the organization is a certain size, then it makes sense to consolidate everything. So let's say we make our source of truth the CRM, like a HubSpot or a Salesforce. However, as the organization gets larger, now we're talking about like in the thousands of employees, or let's say we are across different geographical regions where the social function is different, or we're across different business sectors, then it makes sense to get smaller to get larger. And I say that to say is, if the guys in the marketing team are using a certain set of data points, let them use that certain set of data points. Obviously, give them some parameters around that. Whereas if the accounting group is leveraging a certain set of data points, let them keep that. And maybe there'll be some data points that we can align. But ultimately, a lot of the times when we're scaling an organization, those individual or units or sections or regions need to have a certain level of autonomy so that way they can scale. Because if we restrict them too much, then it kind of takes away from their ability to function effectively in those spaces. And I said that's just my experience.
Okay. And so
I
you're
mean,
saying that it's best for them to, for a larger organization with multiple teams and departments, to start small, then grow.
That's the foundational point. So a lot of the times, like the
Right.
organization may start with like 2 or 3 people in a unit and say, okay, I need you to set up this office in Houston, which we see right now. And how we do business is different than how they would do business. Let's say if the organization was an overseas or from London. And so like the language that we leverage is different. The way that we interact is different. And so like even so like when I say languages, you guys know what I'm saying. I'm saying, this is not my first rodeo. Whereas if we've been on those international calls and we leverage our language to be like, I don't understand. Can you please explain that to me? And so
Yeah.
we have to be able to at least give those local resources the ability to grow. Now, when you get to a certain point, then you can have other discussions. But again, we want to give them, we don't want to choke them, but we don't want to give them too much freedom.
I love that perspective. And that is on the international, well, more if you have like an international team. And so you made a good point of letting the data grow local and then expanding that out. So when I was at Hearst, that was a corporate experience I had. That was something that we were doing, right? So specifically on the programmatic team, we were using like, I want to say it was like, I forget. It was like some tool. I forget. Open Book or something like that. But nonetheless, the Houston team, we would use the same tools that, of course, those in California, New York, et cetera, were using. But then we were the phase out team, right? And so the Houston department, we were the ones who went from Open Book to Naviga. That was a tool. And so we were the ones who tested the rollout. We basically utilized it, got the workflow down, and then they expanded out from there, right? Or should be expanded out from there at this point. And so the point you were making was letting the data grow local. I think a lot of smaller shops, of course, we just started with that trusted stack, right? Like we're going to use the tools that we need. But for the larger orgs, you may have a department in Indonesia, you may have one in France, right? And so depending on the work that they're doing, if it's not congruent, to the point you made, let the data grow. Leticia, what is your point on that localization of data? How do you feel about that?
I think that it does work to a certain point, but I've also seen the point of failure. And so I think, a decade ago, I would 100% agree with Edward. I think that with the globalization of most industries and most technologies and most teams, that we really do have to put more parameters around it. And I work with multinationals quite often in our integrations with their teams, and one of the fail points that we are solving for today is we have our marketing team that are, maybe they're doing events and they're doing activations, but that in Atlanta, but that data is not flowing back to our marketing team in New York. And so we're not
Mhm.
getting and benefiting from shared insights on what's happening in market. And then maybe our team is in London is doing something and it's really great and it's working really well, but now we don't have access to that data because of the localization effect. And so now it becomes, well, how do we take a step back and ensure that all of these insights are being delivered in real time, whether you're the revenue team who needs to look at the bottom line and needs to be responsible to that, or you're the marketing team who needs to understand why you can't pay $3 million on an activation and not have a clear ROI, right? And
Right.
so within marketing, especially this argument between performance marketing, where you're just spending a lot but you're getting a very clear ROI, and you have your CPMs and you have that clear understanding of what success looks like, but then you go into influencer and you go into awareness campaigns and there isn't that clarity because of that lack of shared language on what success looks like. And so for me and for us and for our customers, the first step is always starting with, do you have a shared language for what success looks like? And that language always starts with, what are the data points and the benchmarks that you're looking at? And so if the entire organization is processing and marketing is using a tool to do their workflow because it works great for them, but finance is not using that tool, and then your paid team is not using that tool, it's not benefiting the organization, and you don't have that shared language, you don't have that shared system of record. And so what we really focus on is creating that shared language, giving people access to their data so that they can make informed decisions about what next step they should take. And so I think most companies, whether you're a mid-sized company or you are a global enterprise brand, should really be looking at, do our teams know what success looks like? Do we have a shared language for what success looks like? And how can we build the tools to enable that success consistently? Because if you don't have that, then you're going to have these moments where, hey, we ran a campaign last quarter. It takes us 3 to 4 weeks to realize that actually that campaign wasn't successful. And we're seeing it now across the board with budgets tightening and performance being more looked at. People are increasing budgets in certain areas and decreasing in others, and it's because they just don't have a shared language for success.
That is the perspective. Yes, indeed. And as you know, being in the media buying space, that's exactly what's happening. People are definitely coming to us for the performance piece. And like we used to do influence, we used to do our activations, but 50K on the activation and I'm not seeing 100, plus back. But if I spend 50 on this ad, I can track it all the way down to last point, right? So I think that's great. Edward, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, well, I think that every situation is unique. And so
Okay.
depending on, when we do our assessments and our analysis of those organizations, um, it's just going to depend on that situation. So like to the point of what you guys are saying, even like right now in terms of like the media buy, the spend, you can take the exact same campaign and have all the metrics and say, wow, this thing is a home run. We're going to take this and duplicate it all over the nation or all over the world, depending on your organization. But the reality is, um, it may do the exact opposite when you take it to a completely different market. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
what I was saying, why you have to be able to at least allow some flexible leeway. Now, that being said, what Letitia said is actually correct as well, because at some point you're going to have to look at the data and say, okay, is this really what we want at the end of the day? And if it's not, then you have to have a different type of conversation.
I love that a lot. Okay. So we are down to our last question. We're going to save some time, it seems like. So I want to know about the change management and human interface. We've talked a lot about the data. We've talked a lot about the privacy with said data, the sharing. I love what you were saying about that shared language. I think that's really great, and what data will be transferred from team to team and department to department. So within that, when deploying a new system, what is your technical strategy for phase rollouts? And this is to minimize any burnout. And how are you building those internal champions to help the other team members?
Yeah, I'll look at it through two different lenses, right? Again, I spent my career on operational effectiveness and enablement, and so I was always the person that was kind of brought in to identify where things breaking down, how can we improve it, what are the systems that we should be using, and so how I look at it, even now in the work that we do when we are bringing a new product to market. 2 years ago, when I started building Ingenious, no one was really looking at contextual marketing as a baseline. We were, the forefront of that. There was a lot of education that needed to happen. And now we have that conversation when we go into rooms, and we don't have to tell brands that, hey, you need to understand the why before you can unlock the how, right? They get it. And so I think it really starts with that education cycle and that enablement cycle. Because technology is moving as fast as it is, you actually have to front load the education in a way that maybe before you didn't, because people need more time to process. And so how we really look at it is being that partner throughout the integration process, understanding your systems, understanding your processes, understanding your people and the people who are going to be deploying it, and then building out adoption timelines that engage them. One of the things that we've seen in kind of going into an organization where, or going into an industry where the majority of our data is defaulted to spreadsheets, right? That is
Mhm.
not It's not me saying like, oh guys, people use spreadsheets. No, like the majority of data is run on campaigns. I'm sure our audience has dashboards and data that they an Excel spreadsheet that's haunting them right now. And so we couldn't just go in and say, give us your spreadsheet and we'll AIify it and here you go, right? It had to be a very step change process. It had to be, give us your spreadsheet and then we'll upload it into something that looks like the spreadsheet and has the things that you need, but it's smarter and it's more engaging and you understand it. It's familiar to you. And then we could start to introduce other things as they went through that process of adoption and that process of just going from one thing that worked for them, even though it was broken and even though it took them longer than they anticipated, it worked. And so I think it's a mindset shift that has to happen. And a lot of times with products is people just try to force it down. They say, hey, this is the product, this is the change, and this is this is the change that needs to happen. And they're not taking that step back and really thinking about, well, who's the human behind that? How do they work? How do they engage, right? And then from there, building out the processes and the systems that will enable them to be augmented through the work. Because there's also this idea that by introducing the technology, I might be training the technology that's going to replace me in 6 months. And so you
That is,
really
yeah.
have to be aware of those cycles when you're going into an organization and asking for adoption. And because that hasn't been paid attention to, that's the reason that 95% of AI pilots are failing, because they're not thinking about this idea of the human on the other end of it, that champion that has to like the tool, that champion that then has to go and display it throughout their entire organization and say, this is the why, and this is how we're going to move forward.
Oh, that is great. That is great. Edward, what's your perspective?
I'm gonna hit you with the it depends. Um, and the reason why I say it depends, it really depends on the core functional of the organization and the core function of the situation. So going back to the objectives, so I've been in IT probably close to 30 years now, and a lot of these rollouts that we have, they're to Letitia's point, they're ones and zero rollouts. The vendor says we're going to end of life this application, so we have to move on. As opposed to in some situations, you do have the opportunity for some strategy rollouts. But typically, and this is from my experience with the enterprise space, it's like the enterprise space is very difficult to roll out newer technology. And so they end up just acquiring resources or buying out other organizations so they can integrate that into their organization, however ever they do it, whether they replace an entire sector or whether they say, okay, this is how we're doing it now. So that's why I said it depends. But also in terms of that human factor, that is extremely important as well. Change at the heart of it is hard, whether it's changing your route to go, this way or that way home. I've always driven this way, or whether it's changing the applications that you use. And that change creates friction. It creates stress for the individual because now, as to Letitia's point, people are worried about, okay, so if I'm going to change to this application, I have to learn this new application. Then I have to hopefully do it well enough to stay employed. And if I don't, then I'm not going to be here anymore. And I mean, we don't have to make that statistic up. That's just how it works in these environments. The champion is absolutely important as well. But again, I still think we have to drive, especially now, we have to drive it more so from the human level. One of the lines right now that you hear that's being towed by a lot of the C-suite is, hey, we have this new AI tool. We want you to leverage this tool, and it's going to make your job easier to free you up to do some other stuff. I mean, if we go back just a couple of days to the Super Bowl, they had an advertisement that did just that. However, people aren't,
Mhm.
they're not dumb. It's like literally, you tell me to go home because the AI is going to do my job. And, that's not going to sit too well with people. So, in terms of the other side, the human side of that, we have to also look at how we're actually going to retool people if that is the intention of the organization. Otherwise, just be upfront with people.
I love that. I love that. And with these new tools, there's that learning curve that you both mentioned. Just a quick question on that. How are you both championing people to beat the learning curve at scale?
I think right. It just starts with enablement. My team internally, right, and two and a half years ago, 3 years ago, when we started building many of these tools, and I always joke with my team that if most of these vibe coding tools were available 3 years ago at the speed that they are now, right, it's a founder's dream. But in
Mhm.
recognizing that, I also recognize that there is some fear sometimes, especially with more junior individuals who don't necessarily know what good looks like yet. I mean, I actually had this
Ooh,
conversation
that's
last
exciting.
night that I think a lot of times these tools in the hands of senior level contributors and senior level operators are a 10x outcome. If you give, an
I think you hit
engineer,
the nail on the head with that one. In senior people, it's like game changer.
it's I
But
was just about to say,
yeah,
like for you using Cursor, who's been in tech for 30 years, you know exactly what to build and how to get it. For me using these tools, I know exactly what to build and how to get it, what I need out of it, because I've manually done thousands of briefs throughout my career. And that's where I think the education and the enablement within the organization has to come first, which is this is what good looks like. This is our shared language. These are how these outputs should look, so that you know to challenge the system or challenge the tool that you're being used. And so that's really how I look at it within my organization and within the customers that we work with as well. When we're going in to ingest their systems or look at their pieces, we really start with that shared understanding of what does through
You
this
want
process. We really start with, what does success look like? And then we kind of work backwards from there. But I think that there is that gap between the senior level operators who are using the tools and the more junior associates who haven't yet had that training and that management and that enablement. And so we have to spend a ton more time within our organizations, within the industry as a whole, in the education process, so that the tools can have their desired outputs and their desired outcomes. Otherwise, putting these tools in the hands of people who haven't been trained how to use them just creates the same kind of level of outcomes. And that's why everyone's complaining about AI slop right now, because anyone can create and anyone can build an AI campaign and anyone can build a brief, but it looks a lot different than when you've spent your 20 years, 30 years in an organization building out creative strategies. The outputs that we create are going to be better because of this foundational craft that I've established and I've built my career on. Just as Edward's tools that he uses through these AI enabled tools are going to be better because he has that craft. And so I think it's spending more time in the craft and the understanding of the process and the inputs, and then being able to work backwards from there.
that is beautiful. Edward, what's your point on
yeah,
that learning
yeah. I
cycle?
think I think you framed it eloquently, and it goes back to that point that I was making earlier about the people point. There are value in senior employees. You may not agree with how they approach things, but there's absolute value in those senior employees because they do know what right looks like, and a lot of times and this is going back to what's driving organizational change. So a lot of times it's just the numbers, right? The ones and zeros. If we look at the executive track, a lot of the executive track comes from the accounting stack. They move up COO and CEO. And so it's ones and zeros that they're focused on. And so if it looks good on paper, it looks good to the bottom line. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, it just doesn't work out well. But while they're in those positions and they're making these cost cuts and they're hiring these junior developers that have these powerhouse tools, but don't necessarily know how to do it, if they create a piece of code that has a vulnerability in it, where it could have been reviewed by a senior person and say, oh, well, this approach, we did this about 20 years ago. We should change the
Yeah.
language so it doesn't this. And they lose $30 million on that implementation. Well, this guy's already, or girl, is already going off to the next opportunity, and the next person is holding the bag. So again, instead of just having this one and zero approach, it's like, out with the old and in with the new. Let's integrate the old, show them how to better take advantage of these tools and leverage them within these organizations and really grow the bottom line of these organizations so that they're rock solid and that they are there to stand the test of time.
I love that perspective. Do not make $30 million problems, y'all. Get a review by the senior, please.
Please.
Yeah, yeah.
Please.
You see it all the
Man,
time.
All the
this was a
time.
great conversation. So even myself, I feel like I have things to take away and put into the agency. I'm always doing that. But for those of you viewing at home, I hope that you have now a takeaway for your MarTech stack. Number one, if you're not a manager, still use these perspectives for when you're now learning a new tool or when you're the champion of the new tool in the organization, and or to Edward's point, to Leticia's point, bringing up a new tool to senior management, right? Saying, hey, we have a process gap on our team. This is a solution I would like to implement. What is your perspective on that? Because we don't want $30 million problems, and we definitely do not want to lose the insurance coverage. Okay, it's expensive. But Edward and Leticia, I want to thank you both for sharing your time with Alma today. I hope that not only does this first position you, past your already position, y'all like really great professionals, but individuals come to you and utilize Ingenious or come to H-Town handshakes, and really get involved with the both of you. I'm going to close this call with talking a little bit more about Alma, but again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Right. Thank y'all. All right. So I'm gonna add this back to stage. Cool people. Yeah, so just to wrap up, for those of you who are viewing after the live or still here, again, thank you so much for your time. And if you are not a member of AMA or do not know where to come get involved, we'll go through that. So AAMA is powered by our members. We can literally do nothing without you. Membership allows us to continue offering meaningful programs like this. And hopefully we want to scale out. We want to pay our speakers. We want to bring them to Houston. We want to go to New York. We want to do a lot of things, y'all. We need you. But it also helps with building community and advocating for our industry, right? We don't know what's going on until you tell us. We only have our personal perspective, right? So even events like this, we had managers reaching out, hey, I'm implementing these new tools. I don't necessarily know how to give it to my team. How can you help as an organization? And so we found these two beautiful professionals to help us lead that. But if you're not a member yet, we would love for you to join us. Whether you are a professional, nonprofit leader, or agency owner, the likes, we have affordable options for you. Just scan this QR code or even visit our website, which is ma/ma.org. We have Cultural Collective and Professional going for $149 a year. The Mission Partners and Nonprofits for $99 a year. The Business Builder and Agency Owners and Small Business Collectives, this one is $249 a year, and it gets you 3 people. But again, for more information, just visit our website and click over to membership. If you are here in Houston and or our members who are not here in Houston, we have an offering for you. So February event closing us out, we do have our anniversary on February the 19th. That will be here in Houston, Texas. Just check our website for more information on the venue, but that will be from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And then we have another community and culture, but this one is a virtual meetup. So typically we do these here in Houston, but again, we have members that are everywhere. So we want to get involved with you. And so Michelle has introduced the virtual meetup option. This will be really great. Come, get on the camera, have a conversation, have a drink or a mimosa. I won't judge you. And we'll just have a good time, okay? And then March events. So March is Women Histories Month. So we are going to be partnering with Black women marketers for our Creative Flow State event. But we're going to open up the month with Community and Culture Coffee Chat here in Houston, Texas. That is going to be from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we'll release the venue in about a day or two. But again, we're going to be partnering with Black women marketers for Creative Flow State, managing scope creep and feedback loops in design. This will be on March 12th, and this will be virtual, and we will announce the time in a day or two. We just have to finish confirming that. And then we are also going to be doing Community and Culture Happy Hour. This is going to be on March 19th. This one is going to be 6:30 to 9 p.m. here in Houston, Texas. And we're going to close March out with the Art of Cross-Functional Influence, Marketing and Sales Alignment. This one is going to be in partnership with Big Stage Energy. So that is a great partner of ours who gives their members tickets to events like Marketing for the Culture Summit. And so that is going to be on March 26th, and that is also going to be virtual with the time to be announced. Again, for those of you who are members of AMA, thank you so much. We love you. We try. If there's an event that you would like to see or experience, just let us know. The emails are definitely working. And outside of that, we are always open to conversation and community, of course. So join, tell your friends about AMA. We have a plethora of scholarship opportunities that people don't know about, so you need to use them, please. But we have a lot to offer our members, and it has been great hosting this time with you. I'll close out with this. Follow us on Instagram. If you do not, I have you here on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So press follow, like, and subscribe on those places. But follow us on Instagram and Threads at AAMA Houston, LinkedIn at African American Marketing Association, YouTube, African American Marketing Association, and be sure to tag us in your posts. Use the hashtag AAMA Elevate, and we will see you there. Thank you all so much, and this has been a great time hosting.